In 2003, scientists tagged a 9-foot great white shark off Australia's coast. 4 months later, the tracker washed up on shore without the shark. The data was bizarre. One moment, the shark was cruising near the surface. The next, it plummeted 1,900 feet. Something swallowed it whole. But by what? At first, the shark had been doing exactly what you'd expect, cruising near the surface, minding its own business. That's when the drop happened. 1,900 feet is deeper than most great whites ever go. Deeper than they need to for food or safety. And the speed? Way too fast for a shark to be swimming voluntarily. So what does that mean? Something took it. Something big enough, strong enough, and fast enough to drag a 9-foot great white straight into the abyss. That's not how a shark normally moves. That's how prey moves. But here's where things get really weird. After the sudden drop, the tracker registered a rapid spike in temperature. 1 second, the water was a cold, typical 46 degrees Fahrenheit. The next, a scorching 78 degrees Fahrenheit. That's not deep sea temperature, that's inside a body temperature. Let's be clear, ocean water doesn't just heat up like that. The only explanation? The tracker had been swallowed, whole, and it stayed inside whatever ate it for 8 days. That means this wasn't some accidental gulp. Whatever took this shark didn't just kill it, it fully digested it. No trace left, nothing spat out, nothing wasted. And after those 8 days, the tracker was expelled, as if whatever had eaten it was done and ready to move on. Think about what that rules out. The shark didn't just die and sink. Dead sharks don't heat up. The tag didn't just fall off. A detached tracker wouldn't suddenly be sitting in a digestive system. And no, this wasn't a glitch or some kind of malfunction. The data was too precise, too clear, too real. And after going through every possibility, mechanical failure, accidental detachment, some kind of deep-sea anomaly, scientists landed on one explanation. It was another shark. A much bigger one. Not just a little bigger either. I'm talking twice the size. A monstrous, 16-foot-long, 2-ton great white that decided a fellow shark wasn't just competition, it was lunch. Sounds insane, right? But the evidence is hard to ignore. First, there's the location. This happened in an area where massive great whites are known to roam. These aren't the usual mid-sized predators you see in documentaries. These are the giants, the ones that dominate the food chain. And if a 9-foot shark wandered into the wrong hunting ground, well, let's just say nature doesn't hand out warnings. Then there's the temperature data. That heat spike, 78 degrees Fahrenheit. That's textbook great white stomach temperature. And that rules out cold-blooded creatures like giant squid, deep sea fish, or anything else lurking in the black abyss. Whatever took this shark was warm-blooded, powerful, and had the digestive system to process an entire apex predator like it was a snack. And here's the thing, sharks do eat other sharks. It's rare, but it happens. Bigger, older great whites sometimes take down younger ones, whether out of aggression, competition, or sheer hunger. It's brutal, but the ocean isn't exactly a place for sentimentality. But this is where it gets weird. Because even though great whites have been known to attack each other, this case doesn't make sense. Shark-on-shark predation usually means violent, bloody battles, bite wounds, shredded fins, pieces of flesh missing, not a clean disappearance, not a shark being swallowed whole. Think about it. If a massive great white had killed the smaller one, you'd expect a struggle, a carcass, some kind of evidence floating in the water. But here, nothing. The only proof that a shark ever existed was a piece of metal that came out the other side 8 days later. That's the official theory. But even they admit something about this doesn't add up. Because if this is normal behavior, why don't we see it happening all the time? Why is there almost no record of a great white swallowing another great white whole? And if it wasn't another great white, what else could it have been? At first, the idea of an orca being responsible sounded ridiculous. Great whites are the apex predators of the ocean, right? the stuff of nightmares. They don't get hunted, they are the hunters. For years, scientists assumed nothing in the ocean could seriously challenge them. Maybe another, even bigger great white, sure. But an orca? It seemed far-fetched. Until 2023. That's when an orca was caught on camera hunting and killing a juvenile great white off the coast of South Africa. And here's the crazy part. He did it alone. No pod, no teamwork, just one orca against one shark. Starboard grabbed the shark's pectoral fin, eviscerated it in under 2 minutes, and swam off like it was nothing. And this wasn't the only one. He and another orca port had already been seen working together to hunt great whites, targeting their livers with surgical precision. But this? A lone orca taking down an entire great white? That changed everything. So now scientists are asking, was an orca behind the disappearance of the tagged shark? The more they looked into it, the harder it became to ignore. Because an orca actually fits the evidence better than a bigger shark. The deep dive? No problem. The tracking data showed the shark was dragged straight down to 1,920 feet. Great whites don't usually go that deep. But orcas? They can. They're perfectly capable of diving that far to chase prey. The temperature spike? At first, it pointed to another great white, because great whites can regulate their body temperature. But guess what? Orcas are warm-blooded too. And unlike sharks, they have incredibly fast metabolisms, meaning an orca's stomach would break down an entire shark fast. And the sheer power needed to take out a 9-foot shark? Yeah, an orca has that covered. If Starboard could kill a great white in under 2 minutes and take its liver with surgical precision, imagine what an orca could do if it decided to swallow the entire thing. Nobody left behind. Just the tracking tag, expelled when the job was done. And then there's what's been happening off South Africa's coast. Ever since orcas started targeting great whites, sharks have been disappearing. In some areas, populations have plummeted. Some researchers think the sharks are actively avoiding waters where orcas are known to hunt, which means these killings. They aren't just one-offs. They could be part of something bigger. So now we know orcas can take down great whites. The real question is, how are they doing it? Because this isn't random, frenzied predation. It's not chaos. It's tactical, and that's what makes it terrifying. Orcas don't just attack, they hunt. And they hunt with the kind of intelligence that should make every great white shark in the ocean very, very nervous. Normally, orcas work in groups to take down large prey. Coordination, communication, surgical precision, it's all part of the game. But recent observations have blown that assumption apart. Because now we know an orca doesn't need backup to kill a great white. It can do it alone. And the method? It's pure efficiency. No thrashing, no prolonged struggle, just a single, calculated strike. The orca grabs onto the shark's pectoral fin, rolls it onto its back, and within moments, the great white is eviscerated. The liver, the most energy-rich organ, is ripped out with frightening accuracy, and the orca moves on, leaving nothing behind but an empty sea. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but that's just one orca. A fluke, an anomaly, except it's not. Because ever since orcas started targeting great whites, something even stranger has been happening. The sharks aren't just dying, they're fleeing. In South Africa, where great whites once dominated the waters, they're vanishing. Not one or two, dozens. Tagged sharks that once roamed near Gansby, one of the most famous great white hotspots in the world, disappeared for months after orca attacks. Some left and never came back. And when you start messing with the top predator of an ecosystem, the whole system starts to break down. Seals, once kept in check by great whites, are exploding in number. That means more pressure on fish populations, more competition for food, and entire marine food chains shifting in ways we don't fully understand. Even penguins, yes, penguins, are feeling the ripple effect, struggling to compete with booming seal populations. And yet, despite all of this, there's still one question that no one can quite answer. Is this new, or has it been happening all along? Are orcas only now expanding their hunting strategies, adapting to environmental pressures and dwindling food supplies? Or have they been doing this for years, maybe centuries, while we remained blissfully unaware. Because here's something to think about. We only recently started tracking great whites with precision, only recently began using drones and tagging technology to see what's really happening beneath the surface. So now we've got great white sharks, the so-called apex predators of the ocean, literally running for their lives. But let's talk about why orcas are going after them in the first place. Because this isn't random. It's not just some new behavior scientists are casually observing. No, this is something far more calculated. Orcas aren't just killing great whites. They're performing precision extractions. And what they're after isn't muscle, isn't cartilage, isn't even bone marrow. It's liver. And not just for the taste. A great white's liver is a nutritional goldmine, a massive organ that can weigh over 100 pounds and account for a quarter of the shark's total body weight. That's like walking past an entire buffet and only grabbing the prime rib. Except orcas aren't just picking their favorite meal. They're hunting with intent. Because inside that liver, squalene. That's the magic ingredient. A high-energy, fat-rich compound that sharks use to regulate buoyancy. But for orcas, it's something else entirely. It's pure, concentrated fuel. It's nature's equivalent of jet fuel. Dense, efficient, and exactly what a creature as massive and powerful as an orca needs to keep going. Orcas don't just rip sharks apart in some mindless feeding frenzy. No, they know exactly where to strike. They grab the shark, flip it belly up, triggering tonic immobility, which is basically an off switch for sharks, then slice open the abdomen with eerie precision. And then they pull the liver out without disturbing the rest of the body. Think about that. These orcas are over 30 feet long, weighing as much as 6 tons, and yet they're able to perform a move so delicate, so controlled, that the rest of the shark remains untouched. Some carcasses wash up with their livers missing, but no other damage, like a clean autopsy performed by nature's most efficient assassin. And this isn't just a cool party trick, it's changing entire ecosystems. Ever since orcas started showing up off the South African coast, great whites have vanished from their usual hunting grounds. Tagging data shows they're avoiding areas where orcas have been spotted. Entire populations have fled, leaving gaps in the food chain that other predators are now rushing to fill. But the question is, how are orcas overpowering the king of the sea so effortlessly? Let's start with the biggest reason sharks never stand a chance: intelligence. Sharks are instinct-driven hunters. They don't plan, they don't strategize. They see prey, they chase, they bite, and that's about as deep as their tactical thinking goes. Orcas, different story. They're master strategists. They communicate, they coordinate, they execute. Some even seem to practice. A lone great white might be scary to most creatures in the ocean, but to an orca, it's nothing more than a solvable problem. And like any good problem solver, orcas exploit weaknesses. Sharks rely on vision to track threats. They prefer to keep their enemies in sight. That's cute, but completely useless against an orca. If a shark's survival depends on seeing its attacker, what happens when that attacker moves faster, smarter, and from multiple directions at once? Even in one-on-one encounters, orcas outmaneuver great whites with almost comical ease. And speaking of one-on-one encounters, let's talk about Starboard. This orca wasn't just hunting a great white. He was making a statement. A juvenile great white, still a predator, still dangerous, crossed paths with Starboard off the coast of South Africa. And within 2 minutes, it was eviscerated. 2 minutes. All it took was one calculated strike, a grip on the pectoral fin, a devastating bite, and the shark was done. No prolonged struggle, no desperate escape attempt, just pure, controlled obliteration. And that's just one orca, acting alone. Now imagine a pod of them. That's when things get really unfair. When orcas work together, the hunt turns from an execution into something far more chilling, a psychological breakdown. Great whites are lone hunters. They've never had to deal with an opponent that thinks in formations, that surrounds them, that counters every move before they even make it. It's overwhelming. And even if a great white somehow survives an orca attack, it might not be physically dead, but its dominance is. Because orcas don't just kill sharks, they erase them. Satellite tracking has shown that great whites flee entire regions when orcas show up. And not just for a day or two, some disappear for months, even years. These are sharks that have ruled their hunting grounds for generations, now abandoning them the moment they detect the presence of an orca. This isn't normal predator behavior. Apex predators don't just abandon their hunting grounds at the first sign of trouble. Lions don't pack up and leave the savannah because a few hyenas showed up. Crocodiles don't vacate a river because some hippos moved in. But great whites? The second orcas roll up, it's game over. Why? Because great whites are not built for this fight. People love to romanticize them. The ultimate predator, the ruler of the deep, the terror of the ocean. Sure, they look terrifying. Rows of serrated teeth, dead black eyes, massive power behind every lunge. But when it comes down to a real strategic battle, when it's brain versus instinct, when it's coordinated execution versus blind reaction, they fold. Every single time. The problem starts with their behavior. Great whites rely on circling as a defensive move. It's all they've got. They can't whip their heads around like an owl. They can't glance over their shoulders like a wolf checking for a rival. If they want to see what's behind them, they have to physically turn their whole body. And against most threats, that works fine. Other sharks, small predators, even unlucky humans, it's enough. Keep your enemy in front of you, stay aware, prepare to strike. But orcas? Orcas don't play by those rules. You think circling is going to stop a creature that thinks 5 steps ahead? That communicates? That attacks from multiple angles at once? A great white trying to track an orca is like a security guard in a horror movie spinning around with a flashlight, while something faster, smarter, and deadlier closes in from the shadows. And even in a one-on-one fight, the shark still loses, because sharks can't stop tonic immobility. Flip a great white onto its back, and it shuts down. The body freezes. The muscles lock up. The predator that once sent entire ecosystems into a panic. Helpless. This isn't some rare phenomenon. It's a built-in weakness, a genetic Achilles heel that orcas have learned to exploit perfectly. And they do. Over and over. That's why when scientists started finding shark carcasses with perfect, clean incisions, they knew exactly who was responsible. These weren't messy kills. These weren't desperate struggles. These were surgeries. The orcas weren't eating the whole shark. They weren't tearing the body apart in a frenzy. They were going straight for the liver, an organ packed with energy-rich fats, the most valuable part of the shark, removed with such precision that in some cases, the rest of the body was barely touched. Who does that? What kind of predator targets a specific organ, extracts it with surgical accuracy, and leaves the rest behind? That's not just hunting. That's efficiency. That's a message. And sharks get the message loud and clear. When orcas enter great white territory, the sharks disappear. Instantly. Not just for a few hours. Not just for a few days. For months. Even years. This isn't some fluke. It's not an overreaction. It's a pattern. One that's been observed again and again in places like South Africa, where great whites used to own the waters, until orcas showed up and rewrote the entire rulebook. And this isn't just a problem for adult great whites, it's even worse for juveniles. Smaller, slower, less experienced. A juvenile great white is basically an open invitation for an orca to practice its technique. These younger sharks don't have the size or the speed to escape, and they definitely don't have the instincts to recognize an orca as the last thing they'll ever see. And it gets even worse. Great whites don't just wander the ocean aimlessly. They return to the same coastal hunting grounds over and over. It's predictable. It's routine. And if there's one thing that gives orcas the ultimate edge, it's that they learn. They know where great whites will be. They know when they'll be there. And they wait. That's why entire populations of sharks have started disappearing from their usual hotspots. They're not being wiped out by climate change. They're not overfished. They're being systematically driven out by an enemy that doesn't just kill them, it controls them. And if that doesn't completely shatter the great white's reputation as an apex predator, nothing will. And this is where things go from bad to worse, because orcas aren't just killing great whites. They're changing the entire ecosystem. Think about it. Great whites aren't just another predator. They're keystone predators. They keep the food chain in check, control marine populations, and balance entire ecosystems. Take them out of the picture, or even just scare them away, and everything beneath them starts unraveling. We're already seeing it happen. Let's start with the most obvious problem. Great whites are dying, and not in some vague natural selection, survival of the fittest way. This is targeted, calculated, a precision strike against one species from another that's stronger, smarter, and more organized. The result? A very real possibility that great white populations will collapse faster than we ever expected. How? Simple. Orcas aren't just picking off a few unlucky sharks. This is a sustained assault. Every time a great white gets flipped, immobilized, and has its liver torn out, that's one less predator patrolling the ocean. And the sharks? They're not bouncing back. Great whites are already struggling. Overfishing, habitat destruction, and climate change have been hammering them for years. Their numbers? Not looking great. And here's where it gets worse. Great whites do not breed fast enough to keep up with these losses. A female great white doesn't just pop out hundreds of babies and call it a day. She has a long gestation period, produces very few pups, and takes years to reach sexual maturity. So when orcas start hunting great whites like it's a personal vendetta, the population can't keep up. And if you think adult great whites have it bad, try being a juvenile. These younger sharks are smaller, weaker, and totally out of their league. They don't have the size or speed to escape an orca attack. They don't have the battle scars or experience to recognize when they're being hunted. And guess what? Orcas know this. Juvenile great whites aren't just easy targets. They're the future of the species. And when you take out the next generation before it ever has a chance to reproduce, you're not just thinning the herd. You're gutting the population from the inside out. And then comes the displacement. It's one thing for orcas to kill great whites. It's another thing entirely to terrorize them into leaving. And that's exactly what's happening. Great whites aren't fighting back. They're fleeing, and they're not coming back anytime soon. In places like Gansby, South Africa, once one of the best places on the planet to see great whites, scientists noticed something alarming. The sharks vanished. Not for a day, not for a week, for years. And this isn't just one location. This is happening in multiple great white hotspots. Areas where these sharks should be dominating the food chain are turning into ghost towns. So what happens next? Chaos. The moment great whites abandon their hunting grounds, the whole ecosystem starts to spiral. The smaller predators? They take over. This is called mesopredator release, and it's a disaster. Think of it like this. You remove the police from a city, and suddenly the small-time criminals take over. The balance is gone. The system breaks down. And in the ocean, that means seals, smaller sharks, and other mid-tier predators run wild. In places where great whites have disappeared, species like seven-gill sharks are suddenly booming. And while they might be predators in their own right, they do not control marine populations the way great whites do. They hunt differently, they target different prey, the balance is off. And then, of course, there's the seal problem. Because great whites, they keep seal and sea lion populations in check. They prevent overgrazing, stop fish stocks from being wiped out, and make sure the whole food chain stays stable. Take them out of the equation, and guess what? Seal numbers explode. More seals means more competition for fish. More fish getting eaten means fisheries start collapsing. And suddenly, humans feel the impact too. Speaking of humans, guess who's also losing money because of this? Shark tourism isn't just a niche market, it's a multi-million-dollar industry. In places like Gansby and Cabo Pulmo, great whites are a huge draw. People pay big money for cage diving experiences. Local businesses depend on those sharks sticking around. But if great whites keep bailing on their territories every time an orca squad rolls in, guess what happens? The tourism industry tanks. Fewer sharks equals fewer tourists, equals less money, equals economic downturn. And the best part? Nobody can stop this. You can't regulate orca behavior. You can't pass a law telling them to stop hunting great whites. Unlike illegal fishing or habitat destruction, this isn't something conservationists can fix with policy changes. This is natural selection at its most ruthless. And let's get something straight. This isn't just about great white sharks, because orcas aren't just taking out great whites. Other sharks? They're on the list. Seven gills, makos, hammerheads, even bull sharks, those thick-set, freshwater-loving bruisers that don't back down from anything, except apparently orcas. In Cabo Pulmo National Park, bull sharks were hunted relentlessly for 2 years. And these weren't random, clumsy attacks. The orcas were coordinated, calculated. They went for the liver every single time, extracting it with the same surgical efficiency they use on great whites. And you know what's even weirder? In areas where great whites have fled, seven-gill sharks are thriving. They're moving into territories once ruled by their bigger, badder cousins. And that changes everything. But sharks are just the beginning. Let's talk rays. Eagle rays, stingrays, anything with a flattened body and a little too much confidence in its ability to escape. You'd think those venomous spines would be a solid defense, but orcas aren't impressed. They've figured out exactly how to pin, flip, and dismantle these creatures without so much as a scratch. What do you think swallowed the great white shark whole? Was it an orca or something else?